What is going on, my friends and family? Welcome back to another video here on Team Acne. And today we are bringing back a series that I did quite a few years ago on the channel called Does This Cause Acne? Basically, you guys can leave in the comment section below your questions about does that cause acne? And each episode I'll choose about 4 to 5 questions and summarize basically whether they do or do not cause acne. Now today's video, this episode has some really interesting topics like vaping and lactose-free milk, facial hair, all sorts of different stuff. So stick around because we're gonna get to each one. You can check the timestamps for each question in the description below. Okay, starting with the first one, this comes from Enrico, and he says, can having facial hair or having a beard cause acne, or is it better to shave? Now, this is a question that I get asked a ton from guys, and everyone kind of has their own opinion. Like people say, oh, I break out less when I have a beard, or people say I break out way more. Now, there's a couple of different scientific reasons as to why you do or don't break out with a beard. Now, the first one that's probably the most important is what kind of facial hair do you grow? A lot of people will grow either straight style hair, or they'll grow very curly Q kind of hair. And if your hair tends to curl, a lot of times what can happen is your hair can grow back into the skin. Basically, it can curve into a curl, and then that can get into another hair follicle, or it can just irritate your skin, which can then lead to more acne. Or if you have a pimple already forming and then those curly hairs are scratching against that pimple, it can inflame it, exacerbate it, and make it even worse. So yeah, things like that, ingrown hairs, that's one thing to worry about. Another thing to worry about is also when you have a lot of beard hair, then you basically have this closed environment where you're trapping heat and moisture towards the skin. That can sometimes be a problem, especially if you have very oily type of skin, because that heat can actually cause you to have inflammation, irritation, which then can lead to acne as well. Now on the flip side, is it better if you shave it? Well, what can happen when you shave, unfortunately, is if you shave the wrong way, you can cause folliculitis. So you can basically irritate the hair follicle, which then can lead to new pimples. So when you do shave, it is recommended to use an electric shaver rather than a razor where you're dragging the blade over the skin, especially if you have sensitive skin. But for this one, I would say that having facial hair or not is not decisive enough to say whether it does or does not cause acne. This one is definitely up to you, and you have to kind of look at yourself and see if when you're having a beard, do you have more acne or do you have less? And then kind of adjust your life from there. Okay, this next question is a really good one, and it's one that I've had in the past and I've looked into a lot. And this is from Dead Inside. And she says, is rice bad for acne? Because we Asians eat a lot of rice. Now, there are 2 different types of rice mainly that you're gonna be talking about, white rice or brown rice. And usually in Asian cultures, we're usually talking about white rice. White rice does rank pretty high on the glycemic index scale, which basically means that white rice digests very quickly into blood sugar. And when your blood sugar raises very quickly, you have to increase the amount of insulin you're producing very quickly. And when your insulin spikes, it causes inflammation in your body, which then also leads to acne on your face and body. So what can we do about this? So right there, white rice does cause acne. We pretty much know that. Now, what can we do about it? There's 2 things. One, you can mix the foods that you're eating with your white rice. So if you're eating lots of vegetables or really anything that has a lot of fiber, or if you're eating things that have lots of proteins or healthy fats, that will slow down anything in the digestion. So anything that is higher glycemic can be brought down a bit by adding those other things into it. But what is probably the best thing to do is just to move to a different grain. Brown rice is going to be better because brown rice ranks much lower on the glycemic index, which means that it breaks down into sugar and raises your insulin a lot less. It's a pretty simple change, and I know white rice is like really preferred when you're used to it, but after you switch to brown rice, you kind of just get used to it. You could also do other grains like quinoa, that would also be just fine. But really just Google whatever, food it is that you're trying to think of and see if it has a high glycemic index rating, and if it does, look for an alternate that has a lower glycemic index rating. Okay, so the next question is a pretty quick one. This one comes from Jaynard, and he says, do boiled eggs cause acne? Now, I've looked into this one quite a few times in the past, and when I stopped using whey protein way back in the day because it was causing me acne, I switched over to an egg protein thinking it was better. Now, since then, I've looked and looked and looked for any scientific research, any studies that they've done on eggs and acne correlation, and unfortunately, there are none at all. Now, when you do a quick Google search around the topic, you do have a lot of people who will say that eggs caused them acne, and you'll also have a lot of people basically giving the counterpoint point of I've seen if eggs cause me acne. I eat a bunch of them, or I tried eating more than usual for a few weeks and I didn't see any increase in acne. So the anecdotal response is that basically for some people it does cause more acne, and I would break this down to personal food allergies. So a lot of times we have to just go through elimination diets and just look at the foods we're eating and see, you know, if I take this out for a couple weeks, do I improve with my acne? And that can be with all sorts of different things. Eggs is one of them, but also things like soy, or even non-food things like caffeine, or even like coffee where caffeine is. You can take it out for a few weeks and see if your acne improves. And that's what you're gonna have to do with eggs, because there's no scientific, you know, decision or literature on the topic. So I would say this one is up to each person. All right, coming down to the last two questions in this episode. Mun Ki asks, does lactose-free milk still cause acne? Now, if you haven't looked into this before, lactose, which is in dairy milk, is a huge factor for acne. It causes a lot of people acne, and for me specifically, it caused me cystic acne. So a lot of people will say, well, what if I have the lactose-free version? Well, lactose-free milk is basically milk that they then add the lactase enzyme, which breaks down lactose, so then there's a lot less lactose in that milk. Now, it's supposedly supposed to be completely free of it, but when I looked into it a little bit more, Healthline, which is a scientific website that breaks down literature from scientific studies, it basically said that while there is supposed to be lactose-free milk where there's no lactose, if you are lactose intolerant, you should avoid lactose-free milks because they can still exacerbate your symptoms. They can still cause problems in your gut with bloating and other issues. So in my opinion, from that, I'm hearing that there's still a small amount of lactose in milk. I would basically avoid that. In addition to that, with milk, there's also a huge level of leucine, which is an amino acid that causes acne when you have huge amounts of it, and there is a large amount of leucine in dairy milk. And then also, if you go down this route of it, there's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of antibiotics that are injected into animals. And so when you're ingesting their milk, in my opinion, I think you're getting some of that residual antibiotics and hormones. So what do you do instead of this? I would say it's a pretty simple, at this point, very easy alternative. Just go have any other type of milk that's at the store. So cashew milk, almond milk, soy milk. I like Ripple milk, which is like a pea protein milk. There's a ton of alternatives. They all taste really good, and you're avoiding the whole problem entirely. Okay, coming down to the last question in this episode. This one is from Carl, and he says, does vaping cause acne? And I think this is an excellent question because vaping is a very new thing, right? We have tons of information about smoking, but vaping is different, and so there hasn't been quite as much scientific research. So when I dove into this topic, I looked for anything when it came to scientific studies, and there's really not anything directly talking about vaping and its correlation to acne. But I did find one study that showed that there was an increase in a few things when people were vaping. So in this study, they looked at people who regularly vape, and in their results, they found that these people had higher levels of contact dermatitis, which is an irritation of the skin when things come into contact with it, thermal injuries, which is like a burning of the esophagus, just burning of all the tissues that the smoke and vape comes in contact with, and oral mucosal lesions, which are basically just like wounds within the mouth, you know, when you get like cold sores and canker sores, things like that. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is it just makes sense to me that when you're vaping, when you're having this hot air and also the chemicals that are in the vape liquid ingested and breathed into your lungs, it's absorbing into your tissues, it's irritating your esophagus and your lung tissue. And as we know, irritation and inflammation almost always lead to problems in the body, but for those of us who are predisposed to having acne, it leads to having more acne. Now, another reason that I want to say yes, that vaping does cause acne is that if you look around on Google about vaping and acne, you'll see a lot of people posting about how when they vaped more, they had way more acne, and when they quit, that acne went away. You also see a lot of people talking about having dry skin, things like that. So you are kind of messing up the delicate balance, the status quo of your skin when you are vaping. So when we look at actual smoking, like cigarettes, we actually do have a lot of scientific studies that point towards a specific type of acne that is specific to people who smoke. That's called smoker's acne. Again, smoking and vaping are two different things, but they are, you know, they're kind of related. They're like cousins in the same family. And so because we do have evidence that smoking cigarettes can cause acne, I think that may suggest that vaping can also cause acne. So on this one, I'm going to officially say, in my opinion, vaping can definitely exacerbate and make your acne worse. Okay, so there we have it. Bringing this series back, I really enjoy this one. It allows us to get into a lot of different topics in one quick video. We can really mash out a lot of information information. It also challenges me to look into scientific studies that have come out since I've looked at these topics before. So I really like these, and I would love if you guys would, in the comments below, ask other questions. What else causes acne? Let me know what you want me to look into, and I will include it in the next episode. I'll choose 4 to 5 questions, so leave them down there. If you haven't checked out my favorite skincare brand of all time, you absolutely should. You will not be disappointed. Vanish has a whole lineup. I suggest getting the starters kit. You can use my code Brian5. It'll get you $5 off an order of 50 or more. If you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description below. As always, give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're not subscribed already. And remember, you are not alone. You are beautiful, and you're part of Team Acne. I'll see you guys in the very next video.